Greetings, fellow dungeon delvers, and welcome to Dorans and Dragons, where we work together to come up with Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition builds for your favorite League of Legends champions. Today we're building Aatrox, the Darkin Blade. Aatrox was once a mighty champion of Shurima, who ascended and became the vanguard of the Empire against the Void. After years of constant battle, he and his fellow Ascended managed to eliminate the Void and seal them out of Runeterra, but not without a heavy toll. Once the Empire fell, Aatrox and his fellows had scarred minds and idle hands, which never ends well. The remaining Ascended all fell to near madness and came to war with one another. The results of this fall gave them a new name, Darkin. Two aspects of Targon taught mortals how to fight the Darkin, by sealing them inside the powerful weapons they wield. Trapped by this powerful magic within his greatsword, Aatrox can only be freed by consuming a host dumb enough to pick up his blade. The ages of moving from body to body have eroded Aatrox's sanity, to the point where his only goal is to end all of creation, so that he may finally rest. Before we get started with the build, go ahead and like the video and hit that subscribe button so you're always notified when we release our builds. We'd like to take a minute and thank our awesome patrons over on Patreon who support us every month. Thanks for helping us keep the lights on and the dice rolling. One of our rewards for our patrons is monthly homebrew. This month's homebrew is the Hidden City, based on Bandle City. We're releasing last month's homebrew, the First Lands, onto DM's Guild if you're interested in seeing that. Come join us over on Patreon if you're interested in supporting the channel and getting access to some great content. Alright, now let's get into it. As part of our new format, we're going to be opening with a quick preview of the build, and then we'll break it down. For race, we're going with Fallen Aasimar. Per usual, our stats are going to be determined using the standard array. Down the line of priority, we're going to go max strength, constitution, dexterity, charisma, wisdom, and finally we'll dump intelligence. Our leveling path is going to be taking levels 1 through 5 in fighter, jumping to paladin for 8 levels, then finishing out levels 6 through 12 in fighter. Aatrox's passive, Deathbringer stance, is going to come from Great Weapon Master. His Q, the Darkin Blade, comes from Sweeping Attack and Trip Attack. Our W, Infernal Chains, comes from Fire Rune. Our E is going to be Lunging Attack. And finally we get our ultimate, World Ender, from Necrotic Shroud and Giant's Might. Choosing a race this time around was actually surprising. Learning that the Darkin were actually Fallen Ascended Warriors was awesome, and brought us to Fallen Aasimar. This is going to give us +2 to Charisma, +1 Strength, Necrotic and Radiant damage resistance, the Light Cantrip, a nice heal, and the sick Necrotic Shroud ability. We're going to explain the combo once when we hit level 3 in Fighter, but Necrotic Shroud is going to let you unleash your full form for 1 minute as an action. Creatures within 10 feet have to make a Charisma save or be frightened of you, which is going to pair really well with Aura of Conquest, which we'll get later. For background, we're going with Soldier. Aatrox was a champion of the Shuriman army prior to his ascension, and is now in a never-ending battle to end creation. This gives us proficiencies with Athletics and Intimidation, and the Military Rank feature. Military Rank basically gives you the ability to give the bro nod to other soldiers and borrow equipment from their camps and armories. As usual for stats, we're going with the standard array. We need at least a 13 in Strength and Charisma for Fighter and Paladin multi-classing. Strength is max because when we swing this greatsword, we're going to cut people down like daisies in a field. Constitution is next because we're going to be in the thick of things and need to shrug off a hit or two. Dexterity will be next for our acrobats with our flip and leap. Charisma is going to be at a 12 for multi-classing and intimidation. Remember, Fallen Aasimar is going to give us 2 points for free. Wisdom is going to be our average score at a 10, and finally we'll dump intelligence. For equipment, we've mentioned it a few times, but we're going with a greatsword as our weapon. Now, Aatrox's body looks to be heavily armored naturally, but since that doesn't work that way in D&D, I would pick up a set of chainmail to start off your adventure with at least. Alrighty, now let's start breaking down our class levels. We're starting off with a few levels in Fighter. Fighters have a D10 hit die and give us proficiencies with all armors, shields, and weapons. We're also going to pick up Acrobatics and Survival for our skill proficiencies. First level fighters choose their fighting style to focus on. Now this may surprise you all, but we're going with the Superior Technique fighting style from Tasha's. This gives us a Battle Master maneuver and a D6 combat superiority die to use with it. I'll break this down further when we hit level 4, but know that we're going to get another fighting style later, which will be used to pick up the fighting style I'm sure you were expecting when I mentioned we were using a greatsword. Our final level 1 feature is Second Wind, which lets you heal yourself once per rest as a bonus action. You heal 1d10 plus your fighter level. Now, last time I left this part out and someone commented and said their character died because I hadn't reminded them, so let me do so here. Remember to use this before you burn any hit die during a short rest. It is literally free healing. Second level fighters get Action Surge. As I've said before, this is one of the best features in D&D, and makes a 2-level dip into fighter justifiable in pretty much every build. Once per rest, you can push yourself to the limit and give yourself another action on your turn. We'll go over how we plan to use this later. Level 3 fighters choose their martial archetype. We're going to go with Rune Knight for 2 key features, Giant's Might and Rune Carver. Giant's Might is a 1-minute transformation cast as a bonus action. You grow to large, you gain advantage on strength checks and saves, and your attacks deal an extra d6 damage. Your charges in this ability scales you with your proficiency bonus, meaning that you're going to be able to do it more and more often the higher your level. Now the Rune Carver feature utilizes the carving of magical runes into our weapons and armor, which give passive effects and active effects we can use once per rest. The only rune super relevant to us is going to be the Fire Rune, which when activated works just like our W, Infernal Chains. Passively, it gives us double proficiency on any ability checks related to a tool we're proficient with. When we activate it, which we can do after we land a hit on a creature, the target takes an additional 2d6 fire damage, and has to make a strength save or be restrained for 1 minute. At the start of each of its turns, it takes another 2d6 fire, and gets a chance to make the save again. 4th level fighters get the first ability score improvement of the build. Remember, we're trying a new format here, so we're going to clump all the ability score improvements in with the first one, rather than listing them all out separately. At Fighter 4, we're going to take Martial Adept, which is going to piggyback off of our superior technique fighting style to give us a little more taste of the Battle Master. This is going to give us another d6 superiority die, and bring our total maneuvers to 3. Now the 3 maneuvers we're going to use are Sweeping Attack, Lunging Attack, and Trip Attack. Sweeping Attack is going to give us the AoE for our Q. Whenever you hit a target, you can extend the attack to a target within 5 feet, if the attack roll would have counted as a hit for them as well. The secondary target takes damage equal to whatever you roll on the superiority die. Lunging Attack gives us the reach on our E, adding 5 feet to our attack range, and adding the superiority die's roll to the damage for the attack. And finally, Trip Attack is going to give us the knock up from our Q. When you land a hit on a creature, you can force a strength save on them, knocking them prone if they fail. They also take additional damage equal to whatever you rolled on your superiority die. I know it's a knock down, not a knock up, but work with me here. Now at Paladin 4, we're going to get our last feat for the build with Great Weapon Master, which is going to be the damage amp on our Deathbringer stance. This gives us a free attack as a bonus action whenever we crit or bring someone to 0 HP. It also lets us take a -5 to our hit chance to add 10 free damage if we still land the attack. At Paladin 8, we'll bump our strength by 2. At Fighter 6, we'll max our strength of another 2 points. For Fighter 8, we'll bump our con by 2, and we'll do the same thing for Fighter 12. Level 5 fighters gain extra attack, which lets us attack twice per action instead of once. So now, if we Action Surge, we'll be able to do all 3 Qs and then finish with a Deathbringer stance attack. Now we'll roll on over to Paladin. Paladins have a d10 hit die, so we stay thick, but they give us no new proficiencies. The only level 1 Paladin feature to go over is going to be our Lay on Hands, which is a pool of hit points we can use to heal ourselves and others as an action. This pool is going to be equal to 5 times your Paladin level. Second level Paladins get that fighting style we were talking about way at the beginning. We're going with Great Weapon Fighting to turn those pesky 1s and 2s on our damage rolls into hopefully something higher with a reroll. We also pick up Divine Smite here, which will let us turn our spell slots into radiant damage on our attacks. They deal 2d8 radiant plus 1d8 for each slot above level 1. Remember, it deals an extra 1d8 to the target if you're fighting an undead or fiend, so go ham on the Shadow Owls. Level 3 Paladins choose their Sacred Oath to commit to. Like we discussed, Aatrox is on a 1 darkened path to conquer all of creation. And by conquer we mean make extinct, so we're going with Oath of Conquest. This is going to give us a few important features later on, but for now we'll get 2 channel divinities we can use once per rest. Conquering Presence is a 30-foot radius sphere that hits any creature in range that fails a Wisdom save. Remember this for later when we get Aura of Conquest. We also get Guided Strike, which gives us a +10 to any weapon attack roll we make. So when you hear the DM start saying the word miss, you hurry up and yell, "Guided Strike, haha, take that!" But what he was really going to say was, "Ma, get the meatloaf!" And now you've wasted your Guiding Strike because it was going to hit anyway. On a non-psychopathic take, this can also be used to offset the Great Weapon Master attack roll penalty. We're going to skip all the way to Paladin 7 now because everything else in between has either been covered or isn't super relevant to Aatrox. Aura of Conquest is a 10-foot aura that reduces the speed of anyone frightened by you to 0. Also, if they start their turn there, they take half your Paladin level and psychic damage. And we're back to Fighter to cap off the build. Skipping up to Fighter 10 and 11 for the same reason we skipped in Paladin. We covered the rest of it earlier, or it isn't super important to Aatrox, but you should use it in play. Looking at you, Indomitable. At level 10, we do pick up Great Stature, which gives you a few inches in height, and your Giant's Might damage scales to a D8. And finally, at level 11, we get the extra attack upgrade to 3 attacks instead of 2 per attack action. And finally, back with unanimous consent is the recap. Now that we've completed the build, let's see how we did. First, the good. The first time you pop Necrotic Shroud and Giant's Might and then Action Surge to pull off 3 attacks is going to be awesome. You're going to be a force to be reckoned with on the battlefield, literally terrifying your enemies. Now the bad. We only have 2 combat superiority die since we went Rune Knight instead of Battle Master, but I think thematically that's the right call. We also basically have no magical utility or ranged attacks of any kind. That being said, I think this build is going to be a ton of fun to play, especially for you up-close melee lovers. So, what'd you think? I've included a link to this build via D&D Beyond in the description below, as well as Amazon links to the books used in this build. If you enjoy this type of content, please consider supporting us on Patreon. We have a few awesome rewards, including access to our Discord community and monthly homebrew releases. We plan on churning out one League Champion build every week. Thanks for watching, and hopefully we'll catch you on the Rift, or in the Forgotten Realms.